Hi guys, so in this video I'll do a quick run through the cardiac system. So the heart is a specialized type of muscle that contracts to generate some sort of force that pushes blood from the chambers of the heart to other parts of the body where it is needed. Right now, this force that is generated as a result of the contraction of the heart is referred to as the pressure. Right now, the pressure is often measured in millimeters of mercury. Millimeters of mercury, and also the contraction of the heart is referred to as the systole, right? So this is the term for contraction. Then when the heart relaxes, it is referred to as diastole. Diastole. So this is relaxation. All right. So contraction, relaxation. So the heart will contract and relax. So when it contracts, it pushes out blood. When it relaxes, it allows blood to enter into the chambers again. All right. So now let's look at the anatomy of the heart and how blood flows through different chambers of the heart. Now, I know this diagram may look scary or may look um, complex, but I'm going to try to be explicit as possible. Now, just look at the heart to be a house that has 4 rooms. Now, out of these 4 rooms, we have the upper chambers and the lower chambers. That means 2 rooms are up, 2 rooms are down. Now, the upper chamber of the heart, upper chambers of the heart is referred to as the atria. Atria is plural, one is atrium. All right. So the upper chamber of the heart is called the atrium or atria, depending on whether it's singular or plural. Right. Then the lower chamber is referred to as the ventricle. The ventricle. All right. So let's come to our heart. This is the first chamber of the heart. First upper chamber, second upper chamber. First lower chamber, second lower chamber. So this first chamber is referred to as the right atrium. The right atrium. The second is referred to as the left atrium. Then come to the next chamber, which is the lower chamber. The lower chamber at the right is referred to as right ventricle. The lower chamber at the left is referred to as left ventricle. I hope you understand to that point. Now, looking at the structure of the heart, how does circulation occur? Blood enters the heart through what we call the vena cava. Now, there are 2 parts of the vena cava opposite each other. We have the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava. Right? So the blood enters the heart through these cavas, through this vena cava, right? So any which way, it enters through here and enters through here. When it comes to the right atrium, it is the first chamber of the heart. The blood will move from this chamber to the lower chamber. So it's just like a step. The blood enters and it moves down to the lower chamber, which is the right ventricle. Now, it moves through a door. Now, this door is referred to as the valve. This valve is called the cuspid valve. Now, because these valves are 3 in number, it is called the tricuspid valve, right? The tricuspid valve. So it passes through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle, and the tricuspid valve prevents backflow, right? So You know what happens in the ventricle is that when the blood gets into the ventricle contrasts. It contrasts. Now that contraction pushes blood out through this artery. It pushes blood out through this artery and it branches to the two parts of the lungs. So you can see this blood vessel that comes from the right ventricle branches to a part of the lungs where it's going to pick oxygen. So this part of the heart, the parts drawn with the blue color, is known as the pulmonary artery. This part is known as the pulmonary artery. All right. So all these parts contains deoxygenated blood. So the blood in these parts are blood that has been used by the body. All right. So this is just like blood returning from the body, deoxygenated, no oxygen in the blood. It returns back to the body. Now, when it gets to the atrium, moves to the ventricle, it contracts and pushes the blood to the lungs. Now, when it gets to the lungs, that is where it picks oxygen, right? So when it picks oxygen in the lungs, it comes through these valves, these red valves. So the part in red is highly oxygenated. So we have oxygenated blood in this part of the heart and deoxygenated blood in this other part of the heart. All right. So when the oxygenated blood comes in, it comes in through the vein. All right. And this is called the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. Right. The pulmonary vein, the pulmonary artery. Okay. So when it enters through the pulmonary vein, the first place it goes to is the left atrium, which is the upper chamber of the left side of the heart. All right. So the left atrium, from the left atrium, it moves down to the left ventricle. Now it moves down through a door. Now this door is not tricuspid, it's not three in number, it is just two. So we have two valves in the left atrium. And because it is two, it's referred to as the bicuspid valve, or you can call them the mitral valve. All right. Now, when it passes through this valve, it gets to the lower ventricle, which is the lower part of the heart. Now, the heart contracts and pushes the blood through this part. Now, before I forget, there is a valve here. There is a valve here in the pulmonary, in this pulmonary artery. It is called the pulmonary valve. Now, that valve helps to prevent backflow. So when the blood goes from the right ventricle up, this valve opens and allows the blood to go. And when the blood passes, the valve closes, right? So that the blood doesn't go back into the ventricle, the right ventricle. That's the same thing that happens here in the left ventricle. The left ventricle contracts, it pushes blood through this part. And this vein is one of the biggest veins in the body. It is referred to as the aorta, right? Now, this is called the aortal arc. This bending that has these other three blood vessels going out is called the arc, and this blood vessel is called the aorta. All right. So there is also a valve that controls the movement of blood, and that is the aortic valve. Aortic valve. All right. So when the left ventricle contracts, it pushes blood, the valve opens, allows the blood to move, and it closes. Now, when the blood enters this valve, these three vessels take the blood up to the head region, the brain, the eyes, the shoulder. Then the rest comes down back into the system, the body. All right. So you have the blood pushed from the left ventricle to the head, the eyes, and every other organs embedded in the head, and also it moves down to the body, and that is how it goes again from the body when it is used. When it is used for energy and whatever, it goes back and enters through the vena cava, superior and the superior and inferior vena cava, gets into the auricle again and moves to the ventricle. It pushes, it enters, gets to the lungs, pick oxygen, and comes back, enters through the pulmonary vein, enter the left atrium, get into the left ventricle, and it is pushed. Remember, the one that comes from the body is deoxygenated. All right. So it has to go through this process, get to the lungs, so that it's going to pick oxygen and enter. When it enters through the left or atrium, left ventricle, it is pushed to the body. So lastly, you may be familiar with this sound. Now that is the sound of the heartbeat. And what actually happens is that the cardiac valve opens and closes. So the opening and closing of the cardiac valves, these valves we talked about, makes the heartbeat sound. All right, so it's just like a flapping sound. Open and close, open and close, open and close, open and close. All right, so the opening and closing of these valves make the heartbeat sound. All right, so thank you and see you in my next video.